Welcome to another episode of the Grossman Files. We got a great one for you today. Actually, no, we don't. We don't have a great one today. I'm just experimenting with this YouTube live feature, which I've just discovered in the absence of not having a computer down here in Puerto Rico and not having a restream anymore that I used to use, and being very and extremely low tech. I figured I would just hop on just to see who's chilling. And we got Ray J. And we got a wheel within the first minute, so we'll see, so we'll see what's going on. I'm doing this from my cell phone. I'm down here in sunny. Well, actually, it's in Puerto Rico, and we got Debbie. What's going on out there? So I figured I would just pop on to say what's up to the crowd. I've been doing some shorts lately. Been posting like a furious madman on my community. Ro, what's going on? Been posting like a madman on my community page. We got no middle name, and I'm not even sure I'm going to keep this stream up. Like I said, I'm just experimenting, just to see how this goes, because I put all my Maria. Hey, don't I know you, Maria? Give me a second. I got to drink some water over here. So I figured I would pop on just to experiment. So since I don't have anything really planned, just kind of ask me anything type of deal. And if I can answer the question, I will. Hey, did you guys see the Netflix documentary? Wasn't it great? The 3-part documentary. I had no idea that it was going to feature me so much, even though I did 3 days documentary. And I'll talk more about it in a walk and talk when I have the presence of mind to talk about it. But I'll ask I'll answer any questions you have about that. What's going on, Harrison? As we've got a new name up in here, so it's great to see. We got 25 people watching. So yeah, so I'll just check the chat. Like I said, I have really nothing much to talk about. I do want to kind of give some shout outs. Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that. I want to shout out a couple of, one person in particular. Thank you, Roro. I want to shout out my boy, New Cokes Returns. He was formerly New Cokes 2024. And I don't know what happened to his first channel, but it went away. And then a couple months later, he came back. And I like him a lot. You should check out his channel. If you go to my post section, you'll see I linked to a video that he did on the Wendy Savino sketch, which I thought was brilliant. He did about 45 minutes on the Wendy Savino sketch. This kid is a really, really smart young man. I think he's about 25 or 26. I'm not even quite sure how old he is. And quite frankly, he was nice to me, and he said nice things about me. So of course I'm gonna like him. And but he's also smart, and that actually goes along with considering that at this point, the Son of Sam community has been so fractured and so splintered into a million pieces that even the people who agree that David Berkowitz acted alone, even we can't get along. It's crazy. So, but forget about the troglodytic, mouth-breathing moral reprobates who still are in Berkowitz's fan club, who think that he had help, and they're constantly bringing up, what about John Carr's death? What about Michael Carr's death? Wasn't that suspicious? No, it wasn't suspicious. People die. But getting back to New Cokes, I want you to, if you have some time, go to my, because you can type his name into the search engine on YouTube, New Cokes Returns, and I'm sure he'll come up. But I linked to his Wendy Savino video. It's about an hour long. And then he also did another great video, which is kind of a companion. He didn't mean it this way, I don't think. And we're certainly not, he didn't tell me he was doing these videos. I had no clue. But he did a great video on the sketches. Now, you know, the Son of Sam sketches are like one of the most controversial things to still in the lore of Son of Sam, because we used to, when we were all Maury Terry fans, and I did a whole show on this. I don't understand why this is still misunderstood, my position on the sketches. But in the Maury Terry days, one of the tropes that we used to tell each other was, the sketches aren't of Berkowitz. One of them is John Carr, and the last one is Barry Dosenko, and then wheat cars thrown in there for whatever reason, and a do, and a DDD, and a whatever the hell else you want to throw in there. And we just told each other this for years. The Son of Sam sketches don't look like Berkowitz. So last year I did a live stream where, because I used to say that too, and people now criticize me. Oh, Manny used to say the sketches don't look like Berkowitz, but then when the Wendy Savino sketch comes around, he says that they all look like Berkowitz. He changes his story. No, I updated my operating system, just like I've never made a secret of this entire time. You all know that I started this series as the biggest fan of Maury Terry, and once the facts came in. Now, remember, I had the Maury Terry files in 2021. I couldn't tell anybody because I was under this NDA. But the fact is, those files were in my possession for years before I was able to make them public. And I was looking at them and already realizing that we were lied to, but I couldn't say anything publicly, really. And I didn't really dive into them until the whole People versus David Berkowitz thing came about. But getting back to the sketches, once I actually put the sketches side by side, and more importantly, the descriptions, I realized that they were all extremely consistent with one another, including, yes, the Lomino Damasi sketch, which everybody thinks was John allegedly so-called, quote, Wheaties, unquote, unallegedly Carr, because he had a parted hairstyle. But of course, I found plenty of pictures of Berkowitz, and I showed them a million times with Berkowitz had the parted hairstyle. So once I realized that the descriptions were all extremely consistent, well, like I did with everything else, I changed my mind on the sketches and realized that they were all actually of David Berkowitz. There weren't, unless the cult used people who were all 160 to 170 pounds, all 5'8" to 5'9", all with black hair, dark hair, medium build. But no, I think we can all put that out into the ether of complete myth that the sketches don't look like and aren't of Berkowitz. And so this guy New Cokes, he did a great show. I really think you should check it out because it expands upon my show, because he actually became like an expert in sketches and what sketches actually are and how they're used in criminology and forensics. Sketches are not identical. The look of the identical look of the perpetrator, and that's what I think people get too caught up in the weeds about with the Savino sketch. Oh, the Widow's Peak and all that kind of stuff that's going around now to disprove it. People are getting into the granular weeds of it when the sketch is basically an identical twin of David Berkowitz. So New Cokes did two live streams on this that you should go check out on his thing. One I have linked again in my posts section. Maybe they're both linked. But one is on all of the sketches, and one just deals with the sketch on Savino. So Dark Scar. Wait, Wheat wasn't the second shooter in Bensonhurst. No, it was not. In fact, Wheat Carr, who got into the yellow Volkswagen, dropped on Bay 17th Street, almost got into an accident, Bay 17th, and then yelled out, "Motherfucker!" at Alan Masters. It was not. It was not Wheat Car. You know, Wheat Car, if she was a murderer in Son of Sam, she'd be the worst murderer on planet Earth because has such a public profile. She has a website. She answers any questions freely if people respectfully email her. I have a whole email Google Drive folder, and no one's ever going to see it because I'm not one of these people that shows emails, private emails, like so many other people do. I have a million emails with Wheat Car. Even when I believe that something happened there, I don't know whether you saw it on your end, but on my end, it said reconnecting. Wheat Car and her family were the heroes of Son of Sam. I mean, if it wasn't for them, Berkowitz, actually, they had Berkowitz's name in June of '77. If the meeting in Yonkers, and maybe he would have confessed to being Sam at that point, and there would have been 2 shootings that wouldn't have happened: Placido Lupo shooting, and of course the Moscow shooting. But I want to give New Cokes my full 100% Grossman endorsement. The kid is extremely intelligent, and he deserves a shout out for what he's doing, because he's taking my work and he's expanding on it and talking about it intelligently and analyzing the work that actually exists. So it's saying reconnecting again. I'm experimenting with this YouTube live bit here. I have no idea if it's working or not. It says it's working. Where can I see his work? Maria, if you go to my channel, there's a tab that says videos, live, and then at the end it says posts. If you go to that posts section and you scroll down, I did a post on his videos where I link to them, so you can see him there. But it's NUK, N as in Nancy, UKEOAX, New Cokes Returns on YouTube. And I'm planning on doing some work with this kid when I come back to New York and I have a better setup, and it's more because again, I like to yeah, Debbie, I see it's working, but it cuts out. I like to have high technical standards on my stuff. That's, again, I'm just experimenting. 28 people. 28 people. Let's hear from you in the chat, homies. So I had a great day today with my friend Maria, who's in the chat. I hope she doesn't mind that I'm bringing her up. We planted on my farm today. I think we planted 6 trees together. By the time she came, we had already planted 2. I bought a bunch of fruit trees the other day. Sapote, guava, sugar custard apples of the so-called world, all sorts of cool exotic fruit. And we found nice places for them to put on the farm, and we just had a great time. It's the first time I ever met Maria, although she's been a fan since day one, as I appreciate her so much. And of course, everybody who's been with me, old and new. I would say I did not get the bump in subscribership that I thought I was going to get from Netflix, considering that it was seen about 5 million times all over the world. It made number 3 in the United States for the first 2 weeks that it was out. And then in England, it was number 4. So those are pretty impressive numbers. And of course, in the media cycle that exists in this modern, expects that something like that is going to be a big deal for any more than I expected. 3 days of love and then for it to disappear. And you all know that I never talked about it really before it came out, because we actually filmed that Netflix documentary before I met Wendy. We filmed it in I think late March or early April of 2024. And I did 2 days of filming. when that came out, they got in touch with me because they saw my videos, they loved my videos, and they realized that this was a guy who knew what he was talking about. So they hired me on to not only star in it, but to do a lot of the research that was in it. I can't say that I was credited for it in the end, but I got them a lot of documentation, a lot of the newspaper articles that they showed, did a lot of voiceovers for it. And again, I'll talk about it more in depth when I get back to New York. Back to New York for good or just visiting? No, I'm back for good, Ray J. I'm not going to talk about my personal life in any way, shape, or form because I just have crazy haters that are obsessed with me personally. The amount of craziness that went on, even with Netflix, you wouldn't believe. Producers saying, Manny, these people who are calling us, they're insane. They're saying this about you, they're saying that about you, and of course they had to talk to me about it, but we all realized, well, I knew already, but they realized very quickly that they were dealing with very mentally unstable people. And it's kind of sad that people spent a lot of their time in that year, over a year, trying to get me removed from the documentary, which of course didn't end up happening. I was in all 3 episodes pretty prominently. It was actually quite surreal being in there sandwiched between Jack Jones and Lawrence Klausner, because those are the some of the top people in the game when it comes to Son of Sam. Now, let's just admit it, I'm the top guy in the modern era. Maury Terry was the top guy in his era, and of course, for the bullshit that he spewed, and that which a lot of people believed in his satanic panic era that he worked in. But Lawrence Klausner was the man in the early years, and although I have a lot of problems with his book, he really hey, ask me anything. I'll answer pretty much any question. So SCQ said, hold on, let me look back on this. Here we go. Do you have a stream that breaks down, hold on, your journey with the Son of Sam, or is there one? Thank you, Kathy, for that nice statement. No, in a nutshell, here it is. And this is something that I don't think people quite understand, because they call me a plant of the process and that I'm being manipulated by the NYPD to put out the official story and all that. No, I started out in March of 2021 as the world's biggest Maury Terry fan. I believed his book 1,000%. It was my bedtime book. It was on my nightstand. I read it probably about 300 to 400 times. I knew it by heart, the book. And so when lockdowns hit, I had a lot of time on my hands because my business was going under, got fired from NYBG for saying that Bill Gates was buying farmland. And the crazies at NYBG canceled me for that. So I had a ton of time on my hands. And so I decided to pick up a camera and go out and tell Maury Terry's story. And that first video came out, and I expected it to be seen by 30, maybe 40 people. It got to 2,000 views overnight. And the video series became an absolute focus of my life. And now, in retrospect, do I miss New York City? Hell no. New York City is about to suck a gun. It's about to commit more suicide even than it did during the lockdowns, with the current mayoral election of the billionaire's boy, Zohan Mandami, whose objective is to destroy New York City. I'm not worried about him being a leftist. I'm actually worried about him being a banker's boy, because of the billionaires that fund him, his NGOs that ultimately put him into power with the DSA and all that kind of stuff. But it's not my concern anymore, because even though I'm coming back to New York City temporarily, I'm not going to be settling in New York City. Again, I'm not going to make the mistake anymore of talking about anything about my personal life. There are deep reasons for that at this point, but one of the main ones is that I have these crazy people who every freaking day I'm getting emails from these nutcases talking about suing me. I figured I would come back. One of the reasons I figured I would might as well come back to the scene, even though I tried to retire, was if I'm going to get bothered anyway, I might as well be doing content. So, yeah, near gutters on the actual left, Zoran is what we call boutique. Yeah, totally. He's a rich boy pretending to eat with his hands. It's ridiculous. I don't know how people can't see through that, but I'm not gonna get too caught up in New York politics because New York sucked a gun during its COVIDian era when they pulled the COVID hoax on us. New York embraced COVIDian and lockdownism with Hitlerian fervor. Anybody who was there remembers, and it was like that all over the United States. It's weird how people don't remember this. How the lockdown era has kind of been memory hold, and people, I'm not sure whether people were so traumatized that they don't want to think about it anymore. But it's one of those watershed events in American history which totally changed the trajectory of every way we're going. And 9/11 was one, of course. I always say 9/11 was the softening blow, and COVID was the knockout punch. And we're living in the aftermath of that era, and part of that is these weird DSA billionaire-backed people like AOC and Zohan Mondami. And if New York wants to vote for that, then they're going to feel the pain. I mean, that's all I can say. Any thoughts on NBA gambling and the families? No, I actually don't. You might want to talk to my boy, New York City Crime Spot, about that. He's the mafia man. In addition to being a fellow Puerto Rican Jew, my boy, Crime Spot is the man to talk to about mafia stuff. He would know that way more than I can. So it isn't worth the energy. Be positive, and uplifting. Yes, I agree. And actually, Maria was so wonderful today because we were talking about this very subject very briefly. I have a tendency to get sucked into drama and to want to fight back when people like right now. There's a Son of Sam group that's literally stealing my 3-year-old work and presenting it as its own. But whatever. I mean, again, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But getting back to my original point about Netflix, even though it was seen millions of times, I didn't actually get much of a bump up. I got about, I don't know, 500-600 new subscribers. I thought I was going to get 10,000, but it just wasn't to be. I don't know why. Maybe people just don't like me. Hey, that's cool. That's fine. I can totally get it. I'm an acquired taste, and a lot of you guys who have been with me from the beginning, we all went through an experience together, going through the getting back to my answering the other thing about my journey. So I had the Maury Terry files before anybody did, years. I was the reason why you guys are able to see those files, was because I went up there with a few other people and scanned them. And scanned, not scammed, scanned them. And we were under NDA, which we all broke. It was immediately broken not by me, by other people. They were passing out those documents in Discord groups and doing all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, whatever, I didn't care. But my mistake was I gave them to 2 people, one of whom was Neo. I gave them to him when him and I were working together. He immediately ratted me out to Josh Zeman. And then I gave them to Eric Galati. Started passing them out. No, he went ex-girlfriend on me. That's what he did. I didn't call him for a week because I was burnt out. And I didn't return his phone call. So I don't know what happened. He just turned on me, and then he started passing out the files. So then, and once those Maury Terry files went public, that was it. I had no choice but to talk about them. But I turned on Maury Terry over time once I started speaking to people in Yonkers and getting the real story about what actually happened. I could not. His story was an urban myth that was perpetrated by him. People only believed it because they read it in his book. And even though people in Yonkers had a lot of cognitive dissonance about what they were reading, like they were reading about their friends, and they were reading about things happening in the park that they had no recollection of, but they all started having this weird groupthink and believing that it was real. So that's why a lot of these stories in Yonkers were perpetrated, was because of this strange urban mythology that happens when people read things out of books, especially before the internet era. But yeah, so I became Maury Terry's biggest critic, and because I'm a bombastic dude who likes to entertain as well as educate, and I'm starting to sweat like a pig down here. It's like 90 degrees in this room that I'm in. That turns a lot of people off. It turns a lot of people on too, without a doubt, because I have a lot of fans, but I also have some really crazy haters. So what did you do with the Rothstein files? Well, Rothstein is an absolute joke. Okay, Tom Canberra, I don't mean to, if you're a fan of Jim Rothstein, first of all, he didn't have anything to do with Son of Sam. He admitted that. And if you talk to Jim Rothstein, it's like talking to sand. There's no form there. There's no function. It just slips through your fingers. You can't hold on to anything. You start asking him about Ace Brown and Untermeyer Park, and then the next thing he talks about is Marita Lorenz and JFK. And it's all the same stories. I personally think Rothstein was a blowhard drunkard, a mental case who was not anywhere close to what he claimed to be in the New York Police Department. In fact, I wasn't even sure he was a New York Police Department detective. I had to actually verify that through channels that I had in the NYPD. And it did turn out that he was a vice detective on 42nd Street. But he's talking about how he had hundreds of detectives working for him. Nobody ever heard of this guy until he started making a name for himself in the conspiracy world. And then it was just the same stories over and over. So what I did with the Rothstein files, I shit canned them. I basically threw them in the proverbial garbage. There's nothing in them that's actionable as any evidentiary things in Son of Sam. And that's all I'm concerned about. I don't care about Operation Together. I'm not spiritually sick, so I'm not obsessed with the gay underground of New York City. I'm not worried about Ben Rose and Eton Pates, and I couldn't care less about the spiritually sick Nobel Prize winner Gaju Sek, who's a bit player in this whole Son of Sam cult saga. People who are cult theorists at this point, given all the evidence that there is out there to disprove Maury Terry, including Berkowitz's own words, where he said that he lied to Maury Terry. They're retrograded moral reprobates. They have no grounding in the real world as presently constituted. They're still out there talking K Ultra, and Berkowitz was an LSD experimented on. Debbie Zopina, I was under the impression you had moved on. Yeah, I did move on. But you all know how that goes when I make these announcements that I'm moving on. I always come back because I enjoy doing this and people enjoy watching. I mean, I just popped on here and we almost had 40 people watching with zero announcements and just random popping on. So clearly there's an appetite for the Grossman Files, and I enjoy doing this as a hobby and as a pastime, and I still have some things to say, as we'll talk about. So, Tom Cobber, were they original files or copies? Well, they were copies of original files, but what were they? They were nothing. They were files from his Operation Together, looking into the gay underground. And personally, I don't care about the gay underground. The gay underground has zero zilch to do with Son of Sam. And if you believe that, I'm not going to, if you believe that it does, Tom, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not in the business anymore of arguing with people who are into the gay underground, talking about it in relation to Son of Sam. It's just not something that I'm personally interested in. But it is a shame because the people who do agree, that Berkowitz acted alone, even they hate my guts. Saying that I stole all their work, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so that's the way it goes. But yeah, we didn't get a huge bump up in Netflix subscribers, but there were several hundred that came on the scene. And so that's another reason why I want to come back, because these people never got to experience the fun we all had. Anybody who was here from day one remembers how this was like a freaking movement that we all created. And every Monday that we did a show in the Jason Goodman years, and then we did Subscribe Star, and then we did locals, and then we went strictly to YouTube, and then, you know, all these discoveries that we made and all the files coming out because of the pressure that our video series put out. And all the people that we worked with and all the great collaborations that we did, which unfortunately most of them ended up in absolute crap because of jealousy and because of hatred. I mean, people really got pissed off at my success, and they wanted to think that they were the top dogs. And you know, one of the things that I think that I'm good at is recognizing talent. Like if somebody's good at something, like I want to work with them, but they don't have the so we should like work together and elevate each other. But a lot of people don't see that, and it's unfortunate. But luckily I ended up with two stalwart amazing collaborators, and that it mainly one, and that's my great friend and confidant and buddy, Detective Mike Lorenzo from Yonkers Police Department. He's my number one dude, one of the greatest police minds I ever came across, and he was the impetus. And him and I together were the ones who found Wendy Savino. And I always notice that the people who criticize the Wendy story never dare bring up Mike Lorenzo's name to criticize him for it. They only bring up mine. So I miss our homegirl Ruby. Yo, she's around. I was talking with her today. I'm not sure big Rothstein fans. Those vials are very interesting, and I don't get why you're putting them down. Because you don't, Tom, because you're a new person. I don't know your name, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But you don't know my history with Rothstein. The dude's a blowhard. He's a bullshit artist. He doesn't know the first thing about Son of Sam. He talked about being in Van Cortlandt Park and spying on cult meetings while sitting on a bench. That's physically impossible. There are no benches in the woods of Van Cortlandt Park. There are plenty of benches in Van Cortlandt Park, but no one knows Van Cortlandt Park like I do. I know every square inch and nook and cranny. There are no benches where any cult would have met in Van Cortlandt Park. So he's disqualified as a person to take seriously. So therefore his files are toilet paper to me. Yeah, Debbie, Lorenzo, our walk and talks were great. They were so much fun, and hopefully we're not done. Him and I are hot still on Berkowitz being the Bronx. Now, I want to just say that I did some more research on the Bronx sniper attacks, and that I didn't do. I'm a person who's very open when I make errors and when I make mistakes. And I just realized recently, because I cared enough to go back and look, that I lumped in one attack in that spree that actually wasn't Berkowitz. And I had to do because I used that attack to kind of tie everything together and to quote unquote prove that it was him, but I shouldn't have done that. And that was the sniper attack that took place around his father's, right around the corner from his father's hardware store. It was a sniper attack of a 3-year-old boy who was killed. And it happened during just a week or two before the larger spree that occurred 10 blocks north, where 6 people were shot with a sniper rifle, one of whom died. And Lorenzo actually warned me. He goes, "That's not Berkowitz." Before I even went public with that, he goes, "That's not Berkowitz." And I was like, "Nah, I have to bring it up. It's too coincidental." He goes, "It's not Berkowitz." And he ended up being right. But it doesn't matter, because the cops themselves in 1970 did not lump in that particular sniper attack of the 3-year-old with the other spree that took place 10 blocks north 2 blocks away from Berkowitz's synagogue. All sniper attacks, mainly of females. During the exact summer that Berkowitz was working for his father at the hardware store, I don't think it was the same gun. In fact, I know it wasn't the same gun, but it had to have been done it was a 22 rifle that was most likely taken apart, because nobody ever saw this person. He was never caught. And so it's pretty easy to take apart those rifles. And Berkowitz was found in his apartment with a 22 that was with a scope that was a rifle that could be disassembled. So my contention is not that that's the same rifle, because the serial numbers don't work out, but that David Berkowitz was very familiar with the 22 rifle from his days as the Bronx Sniper. I absolutely believe that Berkowitz was shooting people way before Son of Sam. I don't care that Taxi Driver influenced him to get the 44. He was already a shooter at that point. He shot Wendy Savino with a 32. He realized that it didn't work. And then when he saw the 44, he upped his game a little bit. I've been following you since your first video. Oh, okay. So Tom, I'm reading your quote here. I've been following you since the first video. What is your take now on the teacher who was supposedly killed in the park? Thank you for that question. That's a good question, because Karen Wallstrom has come up again recently amongst the moral reprobates. We're still trying to pretend that Maury Terry is correct about this. Maury Terry blamed his entire high school class. He blamed 14-year-old kids, a whole gaggle of them, on her murder. Yeah, as if that's going to be realistic, as if 14-year-old kids are going to be able to keep that secret for the rest of their life, that they shot and then killed their teacher. And not only that, but then they transported her body in about half a mile to a mile. They would have to carry her dead body, which is, I guess it's possible, and then place her somewhere else. No, she was a suicide. There's one document that the moral reprobates never show you, but which I've shown many times, so it should be public knowledge by now, is that Karen Wallstrom had been hospitalized at a psychiatric hospital in Upper Manhattan. Or two prior to her suicide, and she was hospitalized in the psychiatric hospital because of a previous suicide attempt. So she had already one previous suicide attempt. For some reason, she was suicidal. I don't know why, but she just killed herself with a rifle. The receipt was there. She bought the rifle on Fordham Road. There were plenty of gun shops in those times. Nobody would have given her a second look in 1964 carrying a box with a rifle in it, because they were legal to buy in 1964. It was a different time period. She could have just gotten on a bus or driven in her car with the rifle back home to Riverdale. Not that big a deal. And she killed herself in the woods, and that was that. Nothing more important than that. Reg Zeus, sup Manny, when's the big return happening? Well, I just put my stuff on a ship 2 or 3 days ago here in Puerto Rico. It's going to take 5 weeks to come back, so we're looking at mid-December, but that's all right, because I have quite a few things that I need to take care of in New York, dealing with my personal situation, before I can even really think about coming back to this in a full-time way. And it's not going to be full-time, because I'm not going to have, number one, I'm not going to have the time anymore to do it. Again, not going to get into my personal life, but I'm not going to have as much time as I used to. And also, we've already a few more loose ends that I want to get to. I do have quite a lot of files that I never showed all y'all, but I'm not sure that I'm actually going to go that distance with showing everything that I got. Awil, is there anything that still kind of bothers you about this case? Hold on 1 second. There was a question from before. Hi, I followed since last summer, but never written before. I'm curious what happened with the video series about that old man who was supposedly... Oh, okay, so you're talking about Alfred Hunt Howell. A couple things. One, Eric Galati betrayed me so badly by going all jilted ex-lover, ex-girlfriend on me, and then giving the Maury Terry files that he said, Manny, I'll never betray you. And then he, just like Neo did, where Neo gave the files immediately ratted me out to Josh Zeman. And I believe that the David Berkowitz, People vs. David Berkowitz site are my files, and I know that quite a few of them are, especially the Maury stuff. That's all my stuff that I scanned and that we scanned as a group, me, Max, Jess, and Carl Denaro. But I believe the original dump was too, because the file names were the same file names that I had when the Maury Terry files were secret. But Eric betrayed me so bad with that I took the video series down. I just simply won't have that guy's. There's only one video now with him on my channel, but I just won't platform him. He's a pariah in the Son of Sam world, total buffoon, an absolute joke. He tells people what he wants to hear. Now he's best friends with people who you wouldn't believe how they were making fun of him back in the old days. I have a million screenshots of the very people he's going on making videos with now. You wouldn't believe how badly they used to make fun of him. And he used to say the most horrible things about them too. So you can't trust a person like that, and therefore he's just persona non grata. So I took those videos down mainly for that reason. But also, one of the things I do quite often is curate my site, and I do it for ease of the viewer. Like, I knew that this Netflix thing was coming out, and I didn't want a million videos that weren't about Son of Sam on my video series. I want on my YouTube page. Son of Sam related, and post Maury Terry belief Son of Sam related, like when I became an actual realist on the Son of Sam issue. So I have hundreds of videos and archives when I was a Maury Terry fan. Nobody dove into that deeper than I did, of course, with the help of other people in those years. I'm never going to take that away from the people that I worked with. But so the Alfred Hunt Howell video series is gone, but I'll just give you the nut meat in a and then I'll get to your question next. Eric Galati called up. Then this was when we were working together, and he did some great work. I have to say, he did some great work with the Seton Park Dome and with Alfred Hunt Howell, finding people and getting them to talk to him. He found Nikolai Aman, my old friend and the alleged murderer. He found the mother. I tried to find the mother. She was living in a different apartment than where I thought that they had lived. And we found her number, he called, and she spoke to him, and we had a long conversation, which he actually recorded. I'll never play it because she didn't know she was being recorded, and I'm not a scumbag like that plays private conversations of people. But in a nutshell, and you all know that you could trust my word, she said that Nikolai was railroaded by a corrupt detective named Detective Frank Vigiano. And if you look up Frank Vigiano, he was actually convicted for railroading people. He got like 30 confessions that were faked, that he coerced. So Nikolai Aman wasn't on that list of what he was convicted for, but it fit. She said that Vigiano promised Nikolai freedom, that he was giving Nikolai Big Macs and Burger King, or don't quote me on that exactly, but that Nikolai, who didn't have a father growing up, looked at this guy Vigiano as a father figure for some reason during the interrogation, and he told him whatever he wanted to hear. But he said that he, in fact, did not shoot Alfred Hunt Howell, that he was in the house burglarizing. Now, we have different theories about that. Some people that I've spoken with actually thought that he was having a sexual relationship with Alfred Hunt Howell, that he was a boy toy, a rent boy for Alfred Hunt Howell. I could actually believe that, not for nothing, because they found Alfred Hunt Howell in his underwear. But be that as it may, he said that he was in the house burglarizing it. He got caught by Howell, and that Howell had a heart attack and died and hit his head, and that Aman got the hell out of the house, and that he only confessed because he was coerced by Detective Frank Vigiano. And it's going around by people still talking about this case, that they found bullets in his body, in Alfred Hunt Howell's body, during autopsy. That's not true. They found some lead in his body, but they never ever said it was bullets. It was just lead, and that could be lead paint. You know, that was the era of lead paint. There wasn't actually pieces of bullets that were ever. It was just some. They found some lead in his ashes, and so that was a botched case right from the start. And Hunt Howell was definitely a spook for the CIA, without a doubt. The Dodge Foundation they're like the Soros Foundation of today. They were social engineers. They were social wreckers. The Dodge Foundation to this day has people who are still related to the Hunt Howells on there talking about gender being a social construct. What does that even mean? Gender is who believes that crap? And talking about get rid of cash. These people were talking about that in the 90s and in the mid 2000s. So the Dodge Foundation is really wiggy and weird. But again, my main thing is Son of Sam, so that's all I care about. Wheel, there's nothing that really bothers me about this case. I guess you can say the Wendy Savino a little bit, because I'll be the first to say that if you don't believe Wendy, that's fine with me. I don't care. I'm not trying to convince people that David shot her. I believe her story. It's extremely believable. More importantly, all the detectives in the detective division of the Bronx homicide believed her. People with over 100 years of experience combined believed her, especially after they spoke to her, extensively spoke to her and got her story before they spoke to Berkowitz. And Berkowitz in the interrogation did say some things that were interesting. He said, first of all, that he would have found himself guilty. He said it looks very bad for him. He also said that the sketch is a spitting image of himself. He said it's uncanny how much it looks like him. I know his fan club wants to pretend that he didn't do it and that he didn't, but he said these things. I have heard them. So Berkowitz is a liar, and he said he didn't do it. He also said he didn't shoot most of the victims of Son of Sam. He's on tape saying he didn't shoot Carl, Lomino Damasi, everybody except the Bronx victims. And I know you could say, well, Wendy was from the Bronx. Well, he wasn't going to give up Wendy, ever. I believe he gave her up obliquely when he talked about the old woman he shot who crawled away, because that's what she did. And I believe he watched the aftermath of that shooting. But if you don't believe Wendy, it's become a Rorschach test on me. It's become a referendum on me personally, the Wendy case. If you hate my guts, you don't believe Wendy. And even some of my best friends in the business, I'm not going to name their names, but even some of my closest friends in the Son of Sam game are on the fence about Wendy. Nobody has come up to me and said, except for the people who matter, like Detective Klein and the Bronx Homicide Division, the Bronx DA, and Detective Mike Lorenzo, people with actual police experience who have convicted people a million times over and have made thousands of arrests between them, and who know criminology. Those people believe me, but nobody has come out to me and said in any convincing way that they believe Wendy, and that includes my friends in the business too. So there's a message here that's been erased. Let's see what that says. Sorry here, Raymond Patai. Oh, okay. So the hater crew is in here. It's all right. Thanks. Kind of weird though. Woman shooting herself, especially with a rifle. It's not so weird. You just put the rifle out there. Your arm is long enough to press the trigger, and that's it. It's people shoot themselves with rifles, with shotguns, there's videos online like crazy where people shoot themselves with long guns. That's not hard to do. We got a good audience here. Maria, keep Manny rolling. So our wheel's down with the program. So Debbie says, don't feed the troll, Manny. I believe Wendy. Yeah, it's not a matter of feeding the trolls. It's just a matter of trying to make the case for people and trying to make them understand, because everybody's making up their own facts about Wendy who are critics. They're saying that Joe Savino was some mafia maven who nobody ever heard of Joe Savino until I brought his name up to you guys. And now all of a sudden he's a mob figure of such grand importance that he has to be sent a message and that his wife gets shot to send him a message, which just simply never happened or has happened with any sort of regularity or any kind of, there's just no real examples of a mafia guy's wife in New York City getting shot to send a message. Tom Combro was going to ask. It's sad, and he spent like 20 years in jail for that, and he was coerced. His confession was coerced, and I believe him. He didn't do it. See, I always said, even on that video channel, that Nikolai was a dirty thief. I spoke to people who he stole from parents. I told that story. Nikolai also stole at the bar mitzvah of a friend of mine. I was talking with some people in the neighborhood. They were like, yo, we were at somebody's bar mitzvah, Jason's bar mitzvah, and he was stealing stuff out of people's coats. He was a degenerate thief, but he was never violent. He never had any violent tendencies, Nikolai. If anything, he was soft. So I never believed that he shot Alfred Hunt Howell, and I totally believe his mother. When it's his mother, she could say things, but I totally believe his mother when she said that his confession was coerced, because it's on record that he was interrogated by the corrupt detective Vigiano, he who was convicted of coercing, I think it was like 31 false confessions out of people. So Dom Tudlipso, one of my stalwarts, someone would use a rifle or shotgun because in New York City, even back in the 60s, you needed a pistol permit to buy a pistol. Rifles were different. Yeah, see, something that just makes sense. One of the things I'm proud about my video series is that we actually have sane minds who watch and listen and contribute. We're not talking about MK Ultra and scalar. Some dude on my put a post up. Some dude was talking about scalar thought wave. Glassman's apartment. I mean, you guys will be talking about that till the day you die, and you'll never be any closer to any form of truth. It's just really weird self-masturbatory exercise. People talking about MK Ultra and scalar weapons. Thanks for wrapping that up to me. That's been nagging me. It's that last part that bothers me of people who do social engineering. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. We're living in the era of social engineering. We have been since, well, I mean, you could make the argument that we've been going back to that ever since the 1700s, but certainly the last 40 years, they've been ramping it up like crazy. Let me see if there's anything I missed. Berkey gets too much coverage. Well, he's the guy who did the crimes we're talking about, Debbie. So unfortunately, we have to talk about him. Is there anything that bothers you? No, but other than that, I wheel nothing. It bothers me that people are so mean to Wendy, calling her family mob mavens, and that she was, and that her positive identification of David Berkowitz backed up with an identical twin sketch. Yeah, you can quibble at some of the details of the sketch, but if you look at all the sketches of Son of Sam, it's the one that and the Voskerichian sketch were the ones that look closest to him. In fact, one of the people who is hell-bent on talking about how I'm a liar about Wendy, even she, before she even knew what that sketch was, she used it in a post, putting up about a Son of Sam sketch that she had never seen before, and she included it in with the rest of the Son of Sam sketches. So before it became so controversial, even the people who hate Wendy, I'm going to just say they hate Wendy, because, I mean, I'm not the person who came up with this story. I'm just the conduit through which it flowed. Even they were using that sketch to show that it was as Berkowitz. And anybody who looks at that Wendy Savino sketch, it's chilling. It's David Berkowitz. Feeling that I had when I got called by her, when she called me back and she said that it was David Berkowitz, that feeling will never I'll never be able to quite explain it, how significant and how much it hit me when that happened. And then, of course, after that, I remember specifically when Lorenzo and I were done with her interview, that we got back in the car, and I said to him, I said, our lives are never going to be the same again. And I should have been only talking about myself, because Lorenzo is so I don't want to use the word jaded, but he's been through a million homicide cases. To him, this was just another case that was very easy to figure out. So his life didn't change at all. And unfortunately, he never got the credit he deserved in any of the media coverage. He didn't want it. But I talked about him in Netflix, about how important he was, and they edited it out. I talked about him in the New York Post article, and they didn't really, and they gave me all the credit, which I was very disturbed about. But I always, he knew all about it, and so my life definitely changed for sure. I meant the Berkey fanboys give him too much attention for everything other than his murders. Yeah, true. They actually worship him, Debbie, which is even sicker. These people talk about, I'll house him if he ever gets let out of jail. Me and my husband have no problem with that. Okay, you're going to cuck your husband out to David Berkowitz? My only question is, who's going to hold the camera? You or you or your husband? I'm not talking about you, Debbie. I'm talking about the weirdos who are fans of Berkowitz. Admired that you won't be allowed to lower yourself and be manipulated by Berkowitz. All the clippings she kept doesn't scream, I'm not sure. Yeah, they even use that to show, to say that she was manipulated by her husband. Her husband was horrified by what happened to her, and they were trying to figure out a reason why some random person shot her for no appreciable reason at 11 o'clock at night in a dark Bronx parking lot. And because he had been a police officer for several years, he was attuned to criminology. So when he saw the Son of Sam papers, articles coming out, he knew intuitively that this was probably the guy that shot his wife, because it was so similar in criminology. And so he kept rightly all of the newspapers, and he sent them to Wendy. And people want to say, oh, he manipulated her to think that because he was guilty. Okay, if he was guilty, I don't understand why the New York Police Department didn't find that out right away when they had him interrogating him like crazy. I read all the police files. There were like 7 or 8 police files about the guy. Sal Greco, I had Manny on my show, and the same kind of people that went to go look for Wendy were in the comments. Berkowitz cult lives. It's sick. You can disagree, but don't go up to Wendy, a victim. Right. We're talking about Frankly Degenerate, or as he's known, Frank DeGennaro. This sick moral reprobate who's part of this whole crew who loves David Berkowitz, these sick and venal people who worship a dude who shot people point blank in the face, and who to this day has no remorse about it. He gets off on manipulating with his Christianity about it. This guy actually accosted Wendy Savino in the library, and it was a big deal, like about a month and a half ago. And she rightly, and he comes up to her and goes, David didn't do this. And it terrified the hell out of her. When she called her son, she was shaking in fear in the back of a bathroom at the library, praying that this guy wouldn't come and find her again. And so they rightly called the cops, who rightly got right on this guy, Frankly Degenerate, or Frank DeGennaro, as he's called. And we haven't heard from Frank DeGennaro again, because I actually think that out of all the Wendy haters and all the Berkowitz lovers, he actually has a brain, and he realized that was a terrible thing that he did. And you, as they say in Goodfellas, you ain't going to see him no more. Yeah, I will. It was in the newspaper. Look up Frank DeGennaro, FrankDeGennaro. Wendy Savino. If you just type in Wendy Savino, it's one of the first articles that comes up. This sick bastard. We thought that he originally followed her because, as far as we knew, he was living in South Carolina or North Carolina. So we were like, what's this dude doing at her local library? And it turns out that it probably was just a random chance meeting. But it was very, very suspicious. And she rightly got law enforcement involved. Yo, what's up, Ralph? Dude, what's going on, my man? So we got 40 people here. Yeah, so ask me anything. I know I've been kind of going off here and kind of going off on tangents. I'm going to do a larger thing on Netflix. There's really not much to say about Netflix, but I will say that I was like 99.9% of my interviews were edited out, which I understood. But they edited Wendy in such a way. Actually, this kind of bothered me about that. They edited Wendy's story in such a way where it changed an essential feature of her story, and that was glommed on to by the Wendy haters to say, "See, she changed her story again." She has never changed her story. It's been remarkably consistent from the original police files to 2024. They have some crazy obsession with Berkowitz and another with Manny trying to debunk his work. Well, they can't debunk the work because I get what you're saying, Sal. They can't debunk the work because the work is just objective truth. Again, I'm just the conduit through which this story comes out. All I'm doing in this is analyzing police files, analyzing the forensic Berkowitz's own words. But yeah, they definitely have a weird obsession with Berkowitz. I don't understand it, but all serial killers have groupies. It's the sick phenomenon of extremely marginalized and mentally ill people, and you can say that. Boy, these people tried to get me sabotaged with Netflix. They were relentless, and guess what? It failed. No, I'm not. No, Sal Greco. No, I'm not worried about anybody trying to do any harm to me. I have no fear whatsoever about any of that stuff. I don't carry a gun. I'm not licensed to carry. I'm scared shitless of guns, actually. I'm a proponent of the Second Amendment, don't get me wrong. But anytime I've ever been around guns in my dealings with Lorenzo and Detective Klein, my ass is tries to be as far away from that as possible. I want nothing to do whatsoever with being anywhere near a gun, touching a gun, holding it, nothing. So Netflix can't be trusted. I was thinking about, well, I should actually really clarify that this documentary was not done by Netflix. It was done by a company called Radical Media, which was actually the same company that puts out the Sons of Sam, Josh Zeman's documentary. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. It's a production company that produced the documentary, which was then bought by Netflix and aired on Netflix. And as far as your issues with Netflix, I can't say I disagree. I don't have any love for Netflix. I don't own Netflix. I used another person's account to watch it down here in Puerto Rico. I think that they do run a lot of spiritual sickness on their channel, and I personally wouldn't pay for it. But Radical Media was the company that produced the documentary, not Netflix per se. Ralph, dude, Cloud Chaser, play up being afraid of death threats. Well, nobody's actually threatened my death. One time I got a threat to my physical being several years ago, from the husband of somebody, because I was going to go public about Richie Sparrazza. And apparently they were family members or something. And they said, you're going to be in trouble if you do this. And I told them what I tell everybody. I said, go fuck yourself. I'm just not worried about these things. No, they didn't hook me up with a free subscription. But again, Netflix really had nothing to do with this other than it was the company that aired the documentary. It was done by Radical Media. And, Josh Zeman's documentary, a lot of people misunderstand what that's all about. That documentary is often cited by people to show that Maury Terry was truthful, but that documentary is anything but that. It shows Maury Terry to be an absolute total buffoon, retrograde, lying, sick, spiritually sick person who made up stuff. And now, of course, we know how badly he made up stuff with Billy the Artist, his work with Alex Varone, the child artist, who was his high school buddy, who was known as Vinny and Danny in the book, and who I've done a video series on, 3 parts of the Vinny and Danny letters, where, again, I meticulously go through the actual proof and show you, back up my words with actual documentation. I look at it this way. Josh Zeman's documentary came out and gave my video series the push that it needed to get a large audience. It didn't come to any conclusions other than Maury Terry. Sorry, I don't know. Puerto Rico's kind of noisy sometimes, especially on a Saturday night. I don't know if you hear the radio outside, but that Maury Terry to be kind of insane. But it didn't come to any conclusions, and I don't believe Josh Zeman to be an expert in any way, shape, or form on the Son of Sam case. In fact, I've told him that to his face. He's a tourist. He doesn't know the first thing about the intricacies of this case. He still talks about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and that Berkowitz had possible accomplices. He knows nothing about this case. But his documentary was important because I was able to piggyback off of the I already had like 10,000 subscribers by the time that his video series came out on my first channel, now deleted first channel. But he put out that documentary, and then we picked up the mantle from that documentary. And luckily, he gave us the documents. He gave us Maury Terry's files, which then we were able to analyze and realize that Maury Terry was full of shit. And then my video series was the bridge between Josh Zeman's documentary over here and Joe Berlinger's documentary over here. And just like I'm in the middle there, I'm in the middle between those 2 documentaries. You would have never had Berlinger's documentary without my work. It wouldn't have been possible, because even though he might have been able to use Jack Jones's tapes, those tapes didn't have enough depth to get him through 3 episodes of that. He needed what we did. Our work was very important. I didn't even get enough credit for it, unfortunately, but our work was very important in that documentary, our video series that we did. And I would have never been able to do my video series had Josh Zeman not called me up after my 5th or 6th video, asked me who I was, what I was doing, and then for some strange reason, he gave me the files. I don't know why. Him and I were never friends. He's threatened to sue me several times. Every time I tell him, go ahead, do it. Like, I'm not afraid of being sued, because what are you going to sue me for? People get so worried about when they hear the word lawsuit. And I'm just not that type of person, because do you know how expensive it is to carry on a lawsuit? And what are you going to sue about? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Nobody's suing anybody. So anyway, what are people saying? What happened to Wheat? She lives somewhere down south somewhere, and she's doing her thing. She has a video website. Don't know what it's called. I forget what it's called, but you could look her up. Wheatcar.com maybe. Many people don't want the truth getting in the way. Yeah, I always say that the Son of Sam case, and I'm going to end pretty soon because I've been on for an hour and 10 minutes. I expected one person to show up, but it's good. I'm like Sally Field in the 1985 Oscars. You like me. You really, really like me. No, it makes me feel good because, like I say, I enjoy this. This is a hobby of mine. People should get into more hobbies. My hobby happens to be an obsession with a true crime case called The Son of Sam, because I grew up very close to where it was. And I originally came to it through this amazing work of fiction called The Ultimate Evil, which I thought was real when I started. And it's led me to this amazing journey of meeting the people who were in the books, the Neto family, Wheat Carr, Billy the Artist, John Comparetto, Jim Fay, John Rinciari, all of his friends, Jeff Hartenberg, one of Berkowitz's best friends who I had extensive conversation with. It was just an amazing experience, and I'm not ready. I still have loose ends that I want to tie up. I still have some things I want to talk about. I still have people I want to talk to, and I've already set up a great, I'm not going to say who it's with, but I've set up a Billy the Artist level interview with a person who not only has a very important story to tell in terms of I'm not going to say he or she, their relation to the Son of Sam crimes, but also their relation to Maury Terry and how they were lied about. So I'm going to be working on that in mid-December. I already have that lined up. But I enjoy this, and I figure since people are out there now stealing my work and showing it as if it's theirs and constantly writing blog after, and we got cut off for a second there. I figured I would just come back. If people are that obsessed with me, I might as well give them new material to get obsessed about. And maybe we'll talk more to Wendy because she has a story to tell about Maury Terry. And essentially, in a nutshell, it's very simple. Again, we're cutting out here. I'm gonna end this pretty soon. She was absolutely terrified because she, much like Nan Cassara, if you listen to her tapes, Nan Cassara was so terrified she was thinking Berkowitz had a yellow Volkswagen, even though he didn't. So people were making up in mythology surrounding Maury Terry in a much more innocent time period when people believed what was in the newspapers and never dreamed that somebody could lie to them in such a fashion like he did. Wendy was terrified that there was a cult. And so it put her into a fear like you wouldn't believe again. So she's another victim of Maury Terry. So I think we're done with Wendy. I mean, she's a strong lady and I love her so much and I love her family. They're so good and decent and nice people, but she is pushing 90 years old and I don't want to really stress and strain her out. So we'll see if she's willing to sit down and talk to us again and about that. But you heard it from me, and I'm not sure you really need to hear it for her. Kara Shelton, appreciate you and all you've done, all you're doing. Continue to share. Truth is all strange and fiction and maddeningly complex. Thank you very much for that. But I was saying before, and I'll end it here. The Son of Sam cult theory is a table leg on the wider conspiratorial view of the world that these sick moral reprobates have. These people who still think that Roy Cohn buried 3 kids with Daniel Carlton Godjusek on a farm in Connecticut, and that David Berkowitz was there partying with them. The Son of Sam's conspiracy story is an essential part of that table. It's a table leg propping up their worldview. And so if you take that away, well, what happens when you take away a table leg? The table falls down. And they're just not ready to deal with that in any way, shape, or form. So you can't reason with these people. You can't ever tell them. Like, I thought Billy the Artist was going to do it. I thought that was going to be the knockout blow. And what had happened after that, Billy the Artist, people started saying that Marvel Comics was involved with the process. So at that point, I realized, like, you don't argue with idiots. You just let them have their opinions and their worldview, keep it intact, and you just try to move on in life. It's hard because I'm naturally the kind of person who wants to teach, who wants to get truth into people. But I've learned the hard way that it's impossible with this. Do not erase this channel. I'm never going to erase this channel. First of all, I was an idiot for erasing my first channel. I had close to 30,000 subscribers on that channel. I thought I was just erasing those, and then I erased the channel. I didn't realize that I was going to get rid of all my subscribers. But in reality, out of those 30,000, I was only getting the same. I was getting the same number of views average and same. I used to get 80 people in the live streams. Now I'm getting 40 to 50. but I'm getting virtually the same amount of views on my videos. So even out of that 30,000, close to 30,000, it was like 27,580, something like that. There was only 3 or 4 thousand people who were truly interested, and out of that, there's only a handful of people that actually participate. So it's the same now with the new channel, which has grown several hundred since Netflix came out. It's kind of weird. Every day I go on and I haven't been doing videos, and I'm getting 10 new subscribers every day almost. So I figure not only do I enjoy doing this, but I also there's still an audience out there for the G-Man. So I'm very appreciative for every one of you guys who's out there, and I hope that when I come back to New York, I'll be resuming the video series in about 5 weeks from now. So we're talking about mid-December, once my equipment comes back. We got a few videos to through, but you know me, I'll always find some document to talk about, and I'll make sure to get in a motherfucker for all the true heads out there in Son of Sam land. All right, I'm not sure exactly how to end this stream, so I'm just gonna press X, and hopefully that does it. All right, guys, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. That's not doing it. Okay, there we go.